Good afternoon to all of you in the auditorium, and greetings to TFR alumni and guests joining on the internet. So I'm G. Ravindra Kumar, the Secretary of the TFR Alumni Association, and it's a great pleasure for me to invite you to this third Adi Guha lecture. I'm especially delighted to welcome our speaker today, Dr. Mithu Alur, along with Ms. Malini Chip and Nikhil Chip, and all the members of the organization ADAPT. I hope those of you from outside ADAPT have visited the wonderful exhibition that's been set up by them in the auditorium foyer. If not, please do so after the lecture. So may I also invite you to the high tea post-lecture, where you can interact with the speaker. So before we start the proceedings, just as a safety precaution, so I request each of you to wear your mask and maintain distance from your neighbors. But we are all gathered here to be together to listen to the lecture. So please also keep your mobiles in the silent mode so that we have uninterrupted time for the speaker. So let me get the proceedings going by inviting the President of the Alumni Association, Professor Deepan Ghosh, and our Director, Professor Ramakrishnan, to accompany Dr. Mithu Alur onto the dais. Can we have the lights here, please? Thank you. May I request Professor Ramakrishnan to formally welcome Dr. Mithu Alur. Just a minute. We'll do the booking and then we'll do. Okay. So I now request Professor Ramakrishnan to say a few words.
Thank you, Ravi. On behalf of Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you, those who are in the auditorium, also those who are on the virtual platform, to this third Adi Memorial Lecture. This is an important public meeting arranged by TFR Alumni Association. So I take this opportunity to say hello to all our alumni who have joined us from various parts of the globe. It is my great privilege to welcome Padma Shri Dr. Mithu Alur, who is the founder and chairperson of the organization called ADAPT, formerly known as the Spastic Society of India. ADAPT, of course, refers to able, disabled, all people together, a very nice term. And ADAPT and TFR are in the neighborhood for, I think, about 5 decades. Although we were in the neighborhood, we didn't have a close interaction, but I think that is changing rapidly. I think we are going to have close interaction with them. I think this is the best opportunity for us to understand the immense contribution Dr. Alur and her organizations have made in this country over 5 decades. It's also my pleasure that we are having this physical meeting, though it's called hybrid. And this is the very important event which has happened after the pandemic. I'm hoping that we will have more of such public lectures in the near future. And for that to happen, as Ravi has cautioned you several times, we must not lift the guard down. Keep your mask up whenever it's necessary, and we must follow the COVID protocols, and so that we keep this COVID at bay the way we are now doing it. So this will enable us to meet us more often in this wonderful auditorium. Once again, I thank the Alumni Association for arranging this talk, and also thank Dr. Alur for accepting our invitation and giving the talk. Like all of you, I am also looking forward to the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramakrishnan. Now it's turn now for Professor Dipan Ghosh, our president, to say a few words about the Alumni Association and more so about the Avi Guha lecture.
Professor Ramakrishnan, Dr. Alur, Ravi, and ladies and gentlemen. As was told by Professor Ravindra Kumar, I am Dipan Ghosh. I am the president of the TIFR Alumni Association. Actually, it's a great pleasure. We are meeting here in person, though it's technically a hybrid meeting in the sense that we have a much bigger number of people who are on either YouTube or Zoom platform. So we're just about seeing the signs of COVID waning, and we were able to welcome all of you in person. TIFR Alumni Association, as the name suggests, is an organization of people who have had relations with TIFR. Many, like me, got their degree, which is primarily a PhD degree, from this institute, in my case, more than 50 years back. And so we come back to our beloved institution to have a networking, which enables us to keep in touch with each other, be of use to this organization in any small way we can, because it has been a very large part of our life. Coming back to today's lecture, Avi Guha was born here in TIFR colony on September 30th, 1973, to Shubhendu and Jayashree Guha. Shubhendu Guha was a scientist here in those days. After that, in early 80s, he left to join United Solar in USA. His father, as I said, was a scientist at TIFR, and Avi grew up at the TIFR housing colony. I sort of still remember him as a little child. His nickname was Ronku, and the family moved to United States in 1982. Avi got his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Michigan and MBA from Ross Business School in the same university. He worked for SAP Americas, Booz and Company, and more recently, that is just before his death, at the young age of 42, at MJ Holding Company as the head of global strategy. He was the founder of MBA Day Camp located in Chicago. Avik passed away in March 2016, leaving behind his parents, wife Jessica, and two daughters, Joey and Laila. So this is the third Avik Guha lecture. The first one was given by Dr. Viral Acharya, who was at that time the deputy governor of the Reserve Bank of India, is a professor of Stern School of Economics at the New York University. The second lecture was given by Dr. Sekumar Banerjee, the then chairman of Atomic Energy Commission. And after that, COVID put a stop to our plans, and we are glad that we were able to start it again with an equally famous personality. And welcome, Dr. Alur. And I now leave it back to Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepan. So now it's a rare honor for me and a great privilege to introduce Padma Shri Dr. Mithu Alur. our speaker today. It's difficult. In fact, I found it extremely challenging to think of something that I can say in a few minutes to do justice to a pioneer like her. But nevertheless, here is my attempt. I hope you'll like it. So formally, Dr. Alur is a graduate I discovered of Miranda House in Delhi and got a doctorate from the University of London for her PhD thesis, Invisible Children, a Study of Policy Exclusion. Incidentally, this thesis is on display in the ADAPT exhibition outside, and I found it very interesting to have a look at that, the kind of thoughts that she had, which have been evolving, I think, over the last few decades. And she's won many, many awards, and the list runs into several pages. So that's again a challenge to just pick out a few to indicate just a measure of the kind of accomplishments and kind of the efforts that she has made over the last 5 decades. The most important, of course, is that in 1989, very early on, the President of India awarded her the Padma Shri. In 2003, she was the first recipient of an international award entitled the Marsha Forest Rose Quartz Warrior Award, which was specially instituted and given for her leadership and contribution to inclusive education from Canada's Marsha Forest Center. 2006, the Paul Harris Fellow Award by the Rotary International United States. 2009, the INPI Indian Express Indian Innovation Award. 2010, the Women of the Year CNN IBM Super Idol Award. And all of us know that she has played a major role, in fact, I think a very, very significant role in making the right to education act a reality in the last some years ago. So let's set all these formal things aside, what happened, which year. Let me now speak in real terms. And this is something that I was very, very sort of inspired to learn about her. And this is something actually that no recognition or awards can actually capture. An outstanding individual who has committed her life to the cause of people with disabilities. Over 5 decades, she single-handedly transformed the public perception and elevated sensitivity towards the needs of the differently able at the individual, societal, and the governmental levels. Most of us, normal people, get disheartened by the magnitude of the challenges that we foresee when we contemplate changes that we think ought to happen in this country. And they're very essential, we feel, but still we just say, oh my God, where do I begin? But fortunately for us, many times just one committed, passionate individual can do the job of millions, and you have an example right in front of you today. Her emphasis on early child intervention transformed the field of mainstreaming the differently able people. She's a highly worthy role model, and the inspiration she has provided to millions of people is hard to even contemplate. ADAPT has many success stories over the past 5 decades, but behind all those success stories, each of those lie the strongest will, eternal hope, and the highest grit and determination. She has positively influenced the lives of, and here you have to hold your breath, 300 million, that is 30 crore people across India and Asia Pacific. You will agree with me when I say that it will be hard to think of another pioneer with similar reach and impact. A prolific author, and you have seen several books outside, she has brought on center stage the ideology of inclusion. Most of us think inclusion, in a very limited perspective, but I found her perspective to be all-encompassing. She wants to include every person, and she believes in the rights of every person, that we are all equal. And she has relentlessly driven home this point as a basic value in our society. So, Dr. Mithu Alur, we are very happy and privileged that you have given us the honor of being a part of an important milestone of your organization, the 50th year of ADAPT, and let's clap to that. 50 years of, eternal hope, 50 years of grit and determination. And while most normal people give up, this is one individual who has never given up hope. And she continues to be pushing the edge forward. So we wait very eagerly to listen to the story that you have to tell us about the Spastic Society of India, how it started, how it became adapt, and your entire life journey. So we wait. Thank you.
Respected Professor Ramakrishnan, Professor Ravi Kumar, Professor Dipen Ghosh, you have completely left me speechless with so much praise, which I'm not sure if I deserve. But I just want to say that okay. That I'm so pleased and honored to be here for this third memorial Avik Guha lecture. And besides such an eminent organization as the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So first of all, Ravi, Professor Ramakrishnan and Professor Dipen Ghosh, thank you really for inviting me here. It's a great honor. All the all the eminent scientists who are here, the students, my fellow partners and colleagues, thank you all for coming here. I'm really looking forward to this. I also want to say that I've had a long association with TIFR. I've had many families who have come to us in the Afghan Church School. I've also had a long association with Tatas. In fact, Tatas is the first company in the country that came forward. And Tata Motors gave us the first bus. Dorabji Tata Trust gave us the money for the first teacher training course. And we were so surprised when Mr. J.R.D. Tata sent us flowers when he got the Bharat Ratna. So indeed, it's a great honor for me and a privilege to be here. As you know, and it's been mentioned, that I belong to a non-government organization, which was previously called the Spastic Society of India, and which we changed to ADAPT. The performance of any organization, I feel, is very dependent on the people behind. And here I take this opportunity to pay a tribute to all of them here for the many years they have had faith in me and the cause. It is because of them that their dedication, their commitment and devotion that Spastic Society has managed to do 50 years of service in this country. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge all members of my family, some of whom are all here, who've given me tremendous support, encouragement and help to spread the organization into nearly 31 states. The title of the paper, as you can see, is Establishing Equal Opportunities, Social Justice, Human Rights in India and the Asia Pacific. The paper is in 4 parts and discussing 3 phases of the growth and basically the momentum that was set up and caught the cyanosia of all watchful eyes in the country. And how it moved from special ed to inclusive ed, which has taken center stage today. It also looks at how this particular concept of inclusive ed is put in the broad framework and ideology of social justice and human rights. I know many of you are all scientists and you're very used to statistics, etc. But this paper is not like that. It is more, it's a mixture of qualitative and quantitative science, because you can't measure human suffering with quantification of that. So you'll see, in fact, a few films which you might find interesting this afternoon. The paper will look at 4 questions: why, what, how, and where. The first part will describe to you the raison d'être. Why did I get involved? And what, in fact, did I do to change the situation? So I'm going to the first part now. And of course, my story is really of many, many journeys. And the first journey began when I became a parent of a child and with disability. And she is here, right there, Malini Chib. And that event changed my life. And she became and is today the greatest teacher. I came from one of those privileged and fortunate Bhadralok families of Bengal, where the background was basically placed during the pre-independence period. So parents were great nationalists, and the dictum was serve India. And also my father was a little too British, but my mother was a spiritualist. So it was a good mixture. And she said, the right is to work only and not to the fruits. So with this background, this was in 1966 in Calcutta. And Malini was born, and virtually nobody knew about cerebral palsy. In India's premier institute, I was told that, oh, she's going to be a vegetable because brain injury is irreversible, the brain cells. There's nothing you can do about it. So we were only 23 and 25, and this was a hugely traumatic experience for us. And we ran all around India searching for a diagnosis. And eventually we had contacts in Britain because my husband had come from Cambridge, and my brother-in-law and sister had just moved, who's also got a tripass from Cambridge. And so it was that we sold everything, and there was just nothing that belonged to us here. And we left for England. There, in fact, the time was in England was key because Malini was assessed as above average, 130 at that time, IQs and all were there. So above average in her intelligence quotient. And it is her own grit and courage and determination that today she has two masters and is in Tata Sons. It was also key for me because at that time we got a wonderful son, Nikhil Chib, who is a restaurateur at the moment and famous for his Asian food in Buzaba. And for me, I decided to study. So I went to the University of London and got myself a diploma and started learning what is cerebral palsy, how does the brain get damaged, and what can we do afterwards. In 1972, came back here and found the situation in India was exactly the same. People were all saying, why should you deal with them when there's so many millions of children who are normal? And this was right from the top. And in fact, the health minister said to me, well, what is spastic, Mithu? I mean, are they plastics? So it was just fraught with negativity and ignorance. And generally the belief that they should be kept at home. So this kind of mindset made me feel that we have to change, that we must get something for India like we had the privilege of getting in London. So the first model, as has been mentioned by Professor Ramakrishnan, was here in the army territory opposite Afghan Judge. And the main thing is we moved the issue from hospital to a special school. And there we also combined education, treatment, healthcare, and socio-emotional development, which people don't understand is absolutely vital, like drama, arts and crafts, music, painting, singing, etc., was all combined. And honestly, if you ask me, some of the great affluent schools over here, whether it was where Nikhil went, Cathedral or BIS, etc., where my granddaughter goes, there was not much of a difference, except we had differently abled kids at that time. But we soon found that inclusive ed had taken center stage. But I thought it was very important that we demonstrate that these children can be educated. And this we did, as you will hear for the rest of the paper. Different models were set up all over the country. Our own admission policy was redefined, and it became much broader. Then community schools came in, where the community, the parents were strengthened, and we were told that please see that you reach to the status of parents, and don't behave as if you're a professional and you have the aura of professionalism when you deal with suffering. Then we went to the hospitals and we set up special schools and departments there. Then we went and changed pedagogy, and we had a lot of capacity building, etc., but not restricted to Bombay, because Deepan and Ravi were saying about this, but that was right from the beginning. It was not restricted to Bombay. It was all over India. In the next one, model was again according to the Millennium Goals, where they say it is absolutely imperative that you have education, inclusive education, as well as inclusive employment. So concepts like selective training, according to the abilities of our youth, and selective placement, according to the needs of the company, were introduced in a beautiful setup in Chembur, called the Skills Development Center. Again, you will see that. And we kept to the idea that we must move away from service delivery to rights. And we kept to the idea of what the SDG goals said about entitlements and equal access to schools. And we promoted sustained, inclusive, sustainable economic growth according to the Ministry of ILO and SDG. In fact, I'll share with you what Helen Keller said. The best thing that I ever did was go out to work, because along with a career, there comes a social life, you know, and I would dread to think of sitting at home or going to a day center. That would kill me. I just couldn't do it. So we also found substantial research to say that disabled people are really very good employees. They're capable, they're reliant, they're productive, and there's less absenteeism. And so we began a three-pronged attack. One was to establish assessment and finding out exactly what are the strengths and abilities, and need-based intervention. And meso level, where that was a micro level, classrooms, etc. Meso level, all communities, so we could start a mass movement, as we had given more strength to parents. And finally, on a parallel level, attack government. And today, of course, we will see the micro, meso, macro model. And one of the things that came out was how children with disabilities can be put into existing services, what are the tools they need, what are the modifications, what kind of preparations are needed for teachers, how can the community be empowered. So that those were the main aims. And I introduced something called the 3 Ds. One was demystification. You cannot just say, oh, it's a technical thing, I don't know much about it. So demystification, deinstitutionalization, you cannot stay in your air-conditioned rooms and nice offices and have an order of professionalism. You have to go to the community, sit on the ground, listen to their voices, and have a cup of tea, samosa, whatever is proffered. And so we managed to do that, and decentralization of services. Because of course, let 100 flowers bloom, we are not interested in just Bombay. We were interested in globally, but starting with India. So engaging the community, listening to the voices of the community, strengthening the community was very crucial to the movement. And we produced a lot of manuals, which will be open to everyone. You can see it there. You can come across, very accessible to any of the spastic societies, and take the manuals. And government came forward and opened the National Parents Trust. And it was placed within a government ministry of social justice and empowerment. So that was a huge, big move. And parents did it all. It was a parents' movement. So in fact, in the South, it was Poonam Natarajan who headed the National Trust, brought in dynamic change. And again, it was Deepak Kalra who went to Jaipur and started services there with one of our most well-known secretaries, Anil Wadhya. We had in Delhi Nita Nandi, Anita Shori, Ninu Jalan, all very, very well placed who spread it there. In Calcutta, we had Juni Bose, we had Sudha Kaur, Reena Sen, together with Jarbrut and Shubhra Chatterjee. And filmmakers became very interested. and the media came forward to help. Filmmakers, like you will see now, they came forward. Shyam Benege, NDTV Pranay and Radhika Roy, a little later, more successfully and more current, Sonali Bose, who produced Margarita with a Straw, and when Professor Ramakrishnan agrees, we can always show it here with Kalki. Satyan Bordaloy, who's there, Ashim Sinha, Priya Dutt, and a whole host of people who came forward with making the films. So we had cerebral palsy on the map in Delhi. It became one of the 11 classifications which the government had previously neglected. And if you address an issue and you win that, then immediately you will get some allocation of money. So budgetary allocation took place for disability and educational reforms all across, making modifications for the children. They can't write so fast, so they got more time. They got amanuenses, which means interpretation. And teacher training spread to the 31 states because Government of India came in with Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, ICDS, etc., and bought a lot of our manuals and spread it to the 31 states. So no longer could anybody here in this great country of ours say that she will just be a vegetable. So I'm going to show you a film now made by Shyam Benege, and it's called Love We Give for Nothing. I'm sure the sound will come on. Okay, let me, I think, move on. Something's happened to the sound, yeah?
Doctor, we are trying our best to save the life of both the mother and the child. You must understand, they are suffering from a very severe trauma.
The child survived, but the trauma surrounding her birth caused profound damage that was permanent, which left her with a severe lifelong handicap. Her condition was known as cerebral palsy. For several years, both mother and father tried to find out more about their daughter's condition. Cerebral palsy seemed an impenetrable wall. It was in England that the daughter and mother found appropriate care. The child could attend school while the mother was able to become a special educationist at the University of London. The child was Malini. Not only did she survive, but has grown into a capable young lady who runs her own desktop publishing unit. She's a graduate of history from St. Xavier's College, Bombay, and has a diploma in advanced studies in computers from Oxford University. Malini is one of 3 million people with cerebral palsy in India. This number grows every year. Malini's mother, Mithu, returned with her to India after a few years.
I remember, though it's 20 years ago, it was quite painful. The very fact that there were no schools who were ready to admit Malini and nobody really cared, I must say that really hurt. And though there were hospitals providing conventional treatment, but there were no special schools or centers with a holistic approach. And Malini was about 6 years old and she had already borne a lot. And she was missing her school in England, she was missing her friends. And she urgently needed treatment. But one day when, in my saner moments, in a more rational moment, I suddenly felt that this was my country and these were my kids. And if something had to be done, it must be created here now. And I think that was really the turning point. That's how it began. It made me much saner. I forgot my own pain momentarily. And I started writing off to people to help. And they all came forward to form the Spastic Society with the main aim of alerting the country about this very complicated condition of cerebral palsy. I remember I was a bit silly and I thought it was actually a momentous event, and I said that I must write and tell the Prime Minister, Mrs. Gandhi. And so I dashed off a note to her, and it was quite remarkable. She wrote back to me and asked me to come and see her. But it was just not sympathy. She followed it up with immediate action. And she wrote off to the Chief Minister here to find an appropriate place. This is the place we started. The army, in fact, came forward graciously and opened up this bungalow. And that's really how it all began. Mrs. Gandhi had given me a list of names, and Sunil and Nargis Dutt were in that list. And she was really a patron with a difference. She always wanted to be a part of it all and knew every child. And then came a person with more science and expertise, because I was just a mere teacher. And we needed a therapist. We needed a paramedical person. And that's when Pam Stretch arrived. And Pam was already working for about 16 years with handicapped children. So she was exactly the right sort of person who we needed.
Help came from all over the country. 2 years later, Mithu's friend Junie and another mother, Sudha Kaur, pioneered the first Spastic Society in Calcutta. Soon after, Meeta Nandi, Yotika Sarkar, Divya Jalan, Anita Shori and many others started the next one in Delhi. Subsequently, the Spastic Society in Bombay, with the help of Rukmini Krishnaswamy and Udip Chaudhary, started a center in Bangalore. And with support from Poonam Natarajan and her husband, a center was started in Madras. Before long, special educationists, committed volunteers and corporate organizations started centers in Kanpur, Pune, Allahabad and Kota. And another organization, REACH, was started by Purabi Bose with help from Tatas. All these became affiliates of the Spastic Society of India.
Toshan, can you hold this with both hands? Very good. Let's have another one.
For the first time in India, strengths and weaknesses of the children were drawn up in profile, and individual programs planned for them.
Very good. There you are. So you can see that he has very good bilateral coordination. You want to break this? You want to break this? Yeah, let's break it then. Wow.
Education with treatment under one roof was the model. Eminent educationists from normal schools were invited to work with the Spastic Society. They combined normal teaching with special educational techniques, training of workers at the grassroots level, and counseling parents in home management are important aspects of this service. A work training unit was started at Colaba in 1983. 6 years later, in 1989, a full-fledged National Job Development Center was built in Chembur, Bombay. Funds for the center were raised by the Spastic Society of India and the Spastic Society in Britain. A variety of trades and occupations are taught here: catering, food processing, tailoring and embroidery, office skills, printing, and carpentry. A center for computer applications was set up to consider the disabled or differently abled people for higher jobs in keeping with their intelligence. The culmination of these 20 years of service and networking has resulted in the National Center for Training and Research into Cerebral Palsy and Other Physical Disabilities. Located in Bandra, Bombay, the National Center represents a fruitful partnership between East and West. A collaborative project of the Spastic Society with Luther Hjälpen and SIDA in Sweden and ODA in Britain. The last 20 years have seen a large number of children grow and become part of the mainstream of life. Bharat, one of the early students, is a double graduate and a computer programmer. Recently married, he works for a laser printing company. He hopes to start his own laser printing unit soon. Imtiaz has graduated from college and intends to specialize in computers. Natrajan is on his way to become a chartered accountant. Jasmina has integrated into a normal school. She plans to be a doctor.
No matter what we do, it will never really be enough until society is ready to accept them, until you change, until community changes. And only then can the handicap be placed within the community. Thank you. Thought you'd enjoy that. I now move on to a human rights framework for action, a shift in approach called the whole policy approach. It was the second historical period of the Spastic Society when, after 25 years of work, I was invited by London School of Economics to be a visiting academic. There I must confess that I felt very ignorant. And I started critically reflecting on what had happened and why there was a macro level systemic exclusion. And policy, I learned, is not made in a vacuum. It reflects the wider socio-economic, the cultural, the political, the historical framework. So it's what governments want to do and they don't want, not what they want to do and what they don't do, or not giving resources to this particular marginalized, neglected place. So I started really a lot of reflection, and then I decided to do a PhD. And I went into a particular Government of India policy, which was violating everything. It was in Dharavi and called the Integrated Child Development Scheme, ICDS, one of the largest preschool schemes in the world, and from 0 to 6 years. Now here, there was complete violation. The children were supposed to be from the poorest background, and it was the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe, and the villages, and they took these children, as you know, in this very critical age of 0 to 5 years. But within that definition, they did not take any child who was different or who was disabled. So classic failure of government, and what is known as institutionalized discrimination coming right from the top to the bottom. And when I asked some of the policymakers, because it is a research of the top people and the bottom people, they said it's never come up, Mithu. They never come up to any of the discussions, and they were all UNICEF, UNESCO, CARE, Plan India, but nothing about disability. So this is why it was completely neglected, and it was a non-political, disempowered group. And the government obviously made capital out of this because it meant no resources to be given here. And so this negative attitude, ignorance prevailed in India. And what is worse, that it was buried in this debris of institutionalized discrimination created by government. So obviously you will agree that a radical change to the approach had to be done. And I looked at what was happening in the world. The world had changed enormously. It was no longer a medical model. People thought of it as a social model, a societal problem. It is not a problem of someone who has to be fixed and fitted into society. It is society, all of us, who create this. So the only way to change this is to provide enabling environment where it is you target environment and the outside framework. The focus is not disability. It is a societal problem. And of course, this orthodoxy was unacceptable. And one of the things that we focused on was this entrenched attitudes. And of course, as I've been showing you, together with a targeting government, we had to demonstrate the change. And here again, I'll show you a small film, this about 4 minutes, by Dr. Pranay Roy and Mrs. Radhika Roy. It's called Towards Independence. Shall we, are we getting that? Yeah.
The disabled too have their dreams and aspirations for employment. Unfortunately, many of these remain unfulfilled, not always because they are handicapped, but because of the many hurdles created by us.
बाहर की दुनिया में जाऊंगा नौकरी के लिए तो लोग समझेंगे कि ये नौकरी पाकर ये क्या करेगा, ये तो लाचार और अपंग है।
पोलियो है, उसके लिए तो कोई काम भी देता नहीं, साधारण दुकान हो या कोई कंपनी हो, उसमें बहुत जगह ट्राई किया, लेकिन क्या उधर बोलते हैं कि तू ये सामान चीज नहीं उठा सकता, ये उठाने खुर्ची उठा बोलेगा तो भी नहीं उठा सकता।
The National Job Development Center in Chembur, Bombay. It has been set up in collaboration with the Ministry of Welfare and NIDRR of Washington. It is these organizations that provide all training and rehabilitative services for the disabled from infancy to adulthood. It has two basic objectives. One is to train the disabled and the other is to place them or to get them jobs. A major offshoot of the Computer Application Center and entering an area of high technology is desktop publishing. Malini Alur has recently returned from Oxford, where she got an advanced diploma in publishing.
the balance of the realm and I'm doing this possible.
Sabita is in home-based employment, having been trained in tailoring. Together with her mother, Sabita produces garments which NJDC helps to market. Library management includes cataloging of slides, photographs, dissertation, and circulation of books and periodicals. Hemant Agarwal and Anil have been placed at Myco Industries.
हम तो अच्छा कर रहा है, कुछ मालूम नहीं पड़ेगा तो हम उससे बातचीत करके समझा, हम लोग हमको पूछता है, हम लोग उसके समझा के बताता हूँ, काम इसी तरह से करते हैं ना, बात भी अच्छा कर, हम लोग के साथ मिलके रहता है.
They do not want the charity and pity that we dole out to them. They want equality and participation. They want an opportunity to be a part of you as free citizens of this country. It is up to us to pull down the physical and social barriers that barricade them. Will you help them in their lonely struggle for freedom and economic independence? Will you try and look beyond their bodies at their spirit, their courage, and allow them to build, to fail, or to succeed?
And of course, undeterred, because by this time, we had a lot of help from government. All the land that was given to me for just 1 rupee, it just costs crores of rupees now. We set up the National Resource Center for Inclusion with help from Britain, Canada, and various other countries. And this is the National Resource Center for Inclusion. And I invite all of you to please do come. I'll be happy to host you there. And so we started the objectives, which were, I think we got a graph there, on the micro level to see that everything was understood in the classrooms. And then the meso level, which developed strength of the community so that it becomes a mass movement, and they themselves can target government. And the macro level, where it was called the whole rights group, and I was fortunate to be on many of the committees and in CABE, which is, as you know, the highest authority in education. We also had an institutional review board created so that we could start research and have full hard evidence of what we were talking about. The IRB could ensure that the Spastic Society adheres to universally accepted scientific, ethical, and legal guidelines. So we've got a whole group of practitioners who have now, for the last 15 years, been doing action research, so which has been extremely interesting. We've got leading doctors and eminent people on the Institutional Review Board, which is headed by Dr. Shamran Nandi and Dr. Farooq Udwadia. So pressure was brought in many ways on the government. And nationally, it promoted the growth of services. In 1974, the Spastic Society of Eastern India, Kolkata, was opened. 1978, Spastic Society of Northern India was launched. The Spastic Society of India opened 2 branches in Bangalore and Madras. These centers did phenomenal work in the peripheral districts and rural areas around them. And today, each of them are independent and doing excellent work and are moving on to the latest current orthodoxy, which is inclusive education. Media helped a lot. All the government channels and other private channels. We put a lot of articles like apartheid for disabled people in India. Is this what India can do? India's 100 million out of services. Invisible children, the forgotten millions in India. We mobilized all spastic societies to give memorandums to their own state governments. And that in 2005, we saw a major policy change. And I don't know if that's coming up here. Yeah. So you can see over here. Is it, okay. That's it. From here. So I know it's may bore you, but I think I can't see myself, so I better just see. So you have legislative change. You have, as you know, the Persons with Disability Act, then the amendment that's taken place. And India is far in advance to some of the Asian countries as far as the legislation is concerned. Then you have a structural change, and I managed through the CAPE committee to move it from the Ministry of Social Justice to the Ministry of, where is it? To the Ministry of HRD. It is called a special department called Inclusive Education Department. And then we bifurcated the ministries of women and child development to women, and then separately to child. We were able to, of course, with the help of the spastic societies, form the All India Regional Alliance around the country. And we began advocacy on the international level. Name and shame. So a lot of the government's policies were internationally told to a whole group of people that they were committing apartheid. They have ratified many of the policies of the United Nations, but in their own backyard, they were committing apartheid. And we did that through a North-South dialogue on inclusive education. The Adapt Rights Group was begun so that it was going to be more entitlements, rights, not charity. And of course, a new national curricular framework was opened up in the system. And children with disabilities included in ICDs. Although I must tell you that there's regional variance, but it is not like when I started years ago, they realized the violation. So they are included now. And the National Education Policy includes them. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, ICDs, includes them. Then, of course, as I told you, no governments will give you money unless you have made it a policy decision. So the definition has changed, and I had to tell them that scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and the disabled child. Just those 3-4 words to be included. That took 40 years. And so now you have allocation from the Planning Commission. Now it's included in the census, because that was not included. So we had to fight for getting 2 questions in, which we've done. And now you know the main thing with us, the main weapon is right to education. And we are now busy implementing that everywhere. These were nominations to various committees, which helped a lot. Yeah. So this is a kind of a graphic display I did with a Canadian academic called Michael Bach. Now we move on. I think we're coming to the last bit. We didn't stop there, undeterred. We went on to the Asia level. There we got very good support from the Women's Council UK. And I know that this lecture is also being shown internationally. And we have alerted all our international donors. And a lot of them are actually watching from the Women's Council. I mean, I know my friends, Patty Axley, Frances Moore, Rosina, they're all watching this. This allowed us to move to all these 21 countries, and that took 20 years. The next one is the North-South dialogue, where we happily named and shamed. And we also taught the Western people that inclusion does not mean only money. It's not a conflict of resources. It is something that has to become a part and rights of every citizen. And inclusion doesn't have to have the Western model. Each country can have their own model. So I think we'll stop there, except to say that, as Ravi mentioned, that more than 300 million people have been touched. And through many, many strategies, and we've got all the primary data, etc. We want to do that with the help of Professor Ramakrishnan and Ravi and Dipesh. We want your help on this. So we had made a quantum leap. But let's just look at individuals. And we'll see the success stories. Yeah, these are all the countries. Can you go back once? That I've worked with. It's pretty difficult auditing, by the way. 7 countries and the government audits, all documentation must be available for United Nations scrutiny. We've done that. It's not me, it's the team. The next one. So let's look at our wonderful success stories. And this is Vipasha Mehta, got a PhD for the first person with cerebral palsy with a PhD in Derrida. Derrida and Foucault. When she first came, and I know Vasha is also here, and we both worked on her. We finished 3-4 years in 2 years with the private tuition, ourselves, individually teaching her. So it was all individual attention. because she was very bright. And she had very bright parents. Anjali happens to be a senior lecturer in India. And Sitanshu is extremely well known, one of our trustees, Professor Sitanshu Mehta, who's a Fulbright scholar, Padma Shri, and the national poet in Gujarati. And they all worked extremely hard. And so Vipasha becomes the first person to get the PhD in Foucault. Next one. Utpal has also worked about 10 to 12 years as an accountant. First in the corporate sector, and then he's joined a couple of other companies and he's come back to us. The next one is, Runa is with us here. She was our first assistant librarian. She is here today. And Lucas is also here today. In fact, he's doing IT management with TIFR tech team at the back here. Toshan Chatterjee is now in Reliance and getting a wonderful opportunity. Over there, he works closely with Subodh Chatterjee, who's just done the metro and, got an award from Government of India. And Toshan works closely with him. And Manju Chatterjee and Colonel Chatterjee is kudos to the parents again. They have worked very hard. And it was that thing where I was doing some work with him. After that, he did all that. And last but not least, we have Malini Chib, author, writer, librarian. At the moment, this picture is about her lecturing at the Sorbonne. So I think we come to the end there, but let me say that there's a long, long way to go to change attitudes. It's very sad, but it is. And we did Piyush Pandey. He did this 1-minute PSA.
Hi, I'm Akshay. I'm in the process of applying for a job. Well, let's say this is a job interview and you're the interviewer. My qualification: I'm a graduate with first division, did my MBA. General knowledge? Ask me a question and I'll probably know the answer. You see, I participate in a lot of quiz contests, debates. You're impressed, probably thinking you will definitely give me the job. But then, you're certainly not sure. You're wondering if it's too much of a trouble, wheelchair and all. How will I climb the stairs? What if the other employees feel uncomfortable? In fact, I am making you uncomfortable right now. You're probably telling yourself, I may not be so good at the job, right?
Differently abled, not disabled. Different needs, but equal rights.
So a very long way to go, and I'm concluding now, only to say that there was a different ideology and philosophy, the broader framework that dominated us all. First of all, I've used a couple of isms like humanisms. Humanism was added to all our work. Teachers and therapists all reached out to the parent, and they really, I haven't come across any in this 50 years who were, patronizing and talking from above that I'm the professional. So a very large dose of humanism, large dose to people who are suffering. And that's a healing touch. I think that was a major change in my work. The other thing was federalism. I was not interested in one's own prestige, power, etc. Not interested. We were interested in the cause. And we went around the country and we decentralized and made them all independent. They were many better than us, but they were able to go to all the peripheral states. And you had to have federalism, which hopefully this country will have. You've got to be altruistic and philanthropic. I know these are boring terms, but unless you have this value system in you, you're never going to do more than your own little job. So that is ridiculous. You have to go beyond yourselves. Beyond yourselves. So altruism was definitely one of them. And I did not believe that it is only me, civil society, who has to do something. So we targeted, because government is the main trustee of the nation. It is government who must change. We managed to. It was not only demonstrations, etc. When the right to education was being done, Mrs. Gandhi herself went into parliament and said that it's not disabled, it's specially able, differently able. She stood up in parliament 3 times. And Mr. Manmohan Singh himself rang up Kapil Sibal and said, what have you done? I've got Mithu here. And you haven't included disability in the right to education after 40 years. So, well, it was not just demonstration and rallies around the country. Basically, I would like to say, be a foot soldier. Be community orientated. And I think we end there because I'm wanting to hear the voices of many. I want to say for myself that I've met wonderful people. All the people and the fellow partners who are my colleagues, they're just wonderful people I've met, which has spurred me on, and one has carried on. And also, I think the personal experience of living with disability and living with someone like Malini, who's an academic, but so he keeps on, teaching, was important. Interacting with my family, seeing the joy and laughter in the children during sports, drama, etc. It spurred you on. It was really like nectar. So I'm going to end there. And I think we've got just one slide. I think we've got where Malini says, Tagore says, let's have Tagore, is the problem is not how to wipe out the differences, but how to unite with differences intact. A very good thing from our national poet. And saying the right thing. And Malini saying life is a challenge. There are many mountains to climb, but for me, the most important one is to climb with a smile. And I come to the end with Gandhiji's famous words that a small body of determined spirits fired by an unquenchable thirst in their mission and to change can alter the course of history. I think we endeavored to do that. And I think we did celebrate diversity for the nation. And we did care, do still care for the aged, the needy, the poor, and the disabled. And it is beyond caste, class, politics, but built on the bedrock of justice and human rights. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Should we have a chair?
So you left us that you received. We'll have questions.
Yeah.
Would you like to take questions?
Yeah, please. I
So
want to
we'll stay
hear
here.
the voices of my people here.
Please engage her, in a discussion on what she has
Yeah,
said.
it's
so
okay,
far.
yeah. Oh, anything?
Or anything, yes. So there are mics around. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. And we will pass you. There's a question here.
I'll take the questions.
Huh. You want a mic? Yeah, there's a mic.
Thank you so much. I think that was really inspiring. Here, I'm waving my hand.
Yes,
Okay. So my question is, what's next? Is it that we have the policies and we just have to make sure that they get translated on the ground? Or is there something more that needs to be done in terms of policies, in terms of government, in terms of the society? Is that you see the next step? Where do you see it?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Sudipto, because I left it out. I did have the way forward. We have to do one thing. We have to operationalize the right to education, because otherwise it will just collect dust in the library. So we are busy doing teacher preparation and transformation of education here towards education for all and recultivation of regular schools. So that is one thing we're doing. We have not been able to actually touch the health ministry too much. Though the Medical Council has said that we must include children with special needs, but we haven't. So we will be targeting the Ministry of Health. And we've begun to do that because we've got a new center for education for pediatric adult neuro rehab center, which will be targeting the medical group and fraternity. Then most important of all, we are moving away from school and going to become a college. I was telling Professor Krishnan that that's where I would need a lot of help from you all. And we hope to be a university because basically we have been the knowledge center in the country. And so those are the big gaps. I'm sorry that I may have sounded very glossy, but I didn't, there's another book which is just looking at the gaps, the barriers, and what we are aiming to do. So it's not ended. It's begun because now it's become macro level and human rights. So now it's begun. We got the money, the budget. So does it answer your question? Sure. Yeah.
Are there other questions?
There's one here.
Hello, ma'am. We are all your students, and this was really nice, thoroughly. The question what I want to ask you is that, a lot of policies you spoke about during normal circumstances. During COVID times, we have learned people with disabilities and their families suffered a lot. In Ukraine, what is happening? I've got mails and communication from my friends there. The people who have suffered are people with disabilities, people who are visually challenged, cerebral palsy. Their institutions have been destroyed and there is nowhere to go. So there are guidelines in normal circumstances. Are there guidelines to take care of people with disability during these disasters? So is it in pipeline? Do you think about it?
Tarun has asked a question which he himself has started in the organization. And it's a treatment, online treatment. And they have done, the therapists, and I can see all of them here. There's Tarun, there's Shabnam, there's Namita, and they've all started excellent treatment during the COVID times. And do you know that they have done more than 7,000 plus? So, Tarun, that answers your question that we have not let the pandemic stop us from working. And we have done more than 5,000 online lessons. So we've done 200 Zoom meetings. So we are professional beggars, and we have donors. So we have to keep on going and moving, etc. Otherwise, it will come to a stop. And I'm very happy to share with you that at the present moment, with all our figures, which even Robbie mentioned, we've got every single donor backing us. Who was backing us before? I mean, not every single donor in the whole country, but the donors who were backing us before are all there. Nobody's left. Does that answer your question?
There was also a question about war and situations like you spoke of inclusion, ma'am. There are disaster management guidelines
correct.
with government, with every civic body, but it excludes people with disabilities. There is no mention, as you mentioned in right to education. All these government programs, the people with disabilities were excluded. Similarly, in the disaster management plan, there is no mention of people with disabilities.
Yeah.
If there is a flood, earthquake, war, we don't know what will happen to them. So we need to work.
Yeah. We should add Ukraine, because there are thousands and thousands of children, cancer affected, disabled, who come into Britain and Poland, and of course everything. But it's a very good thing for us to see, Taral. Thank you for telling us. Dr. Nagda himself is absolutely an icon. He just had a huge accident, if I may say so, and he was completely bedridden, but he's up there now asking me the most difficult questions. He's got his clinic and everything working. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment on the question.
Yes.
There should be an international body, disability institutions, doctors, climate people, that war is a crime. Whoever initiates war without getting into dialogue, negotiations, they should be tried by an international court, because they bring misery, sorrow, head trauma, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, genetic defects, you name them. So it's a crime. War is a crime. The medical body, the disability bodies, and all have to come together and say that whoever initiates war will be tried as a criminal.
Thank you, Dhruv. I just want to say that the big powers are trying to do that with Putin in Russia, and but they are not listening. As you know, they've come to an impasse.
May I say something, ma'am?
Yeah, I just finishing, Dhruv. So, I mean, I totally agree with you. And there are so many bodies, international, who are writing to Putin, the sanctions, etc., etc. But still not happening. Yes, Rekha.
What Dr. Taral Nagda just said about, in this disaster management, disability is not included. But to me, when we say inclusive, I will not look for whether disability is included in it or not. It is taken to, it's granted that everybody will be taken care of. So I don't think we need anybody to now spell out, or particularly also disability, then it is not inclusion. We are still keeping them apart. So to keep them together, we accept that everybody is included. Thank you.
This is very true. Huh, Karen? You got the right answer, better than mine.
Are there other questions? Of course, we can interact with the speaker outside.
Ravi, can you hear me?
If there's anything interesting.
Ravi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there is a question from Zoom. This is from Swaminathan. The question is there any plan for ADAPT to reach out to Northeast India? I did not see that in your map.
The Northeast.
We've got a lot of people. I'm a bit partial to the Northeast, and because I know of the neglect they've suffered from India. And we have a lot of people from the Northeast at the moment in the organization who are extremely talented people. And we are concentrating on training them to come right on top. And we have formed, is that something I can't see? We formed satellite hubs. And one of the places we've included is Northeast. So there's going to be a hub over there, as well as there's one in Tajikistan and Nepal, and there's one in Madras somewhere. So 4 or 5 hubs, which are being supported by the Women's Council, are being formed. And Northeast is very much on the cards, yeah, from ADAPT.
Satya, any more questions on Zoom? Or YouTube?
No more questions. Of course, there are a couple of comments if I can read from YouTube. They are not questions. Sitanshu Mehta says a meaningful and inspiring talk by a brilliant speaker, a courageous pioneer, and a great institute builder. And he says from a parent. And Ketna Mehta says, congratulations for a cerebral take on inclusion. And we, the community of PWDs in India, are grateful to you for your relentless vision and action. Thank you so much. And lastly, KD Mallikarjuna, there is mention, okay, so this has already been covered. Yeah, thank you.
So,
thank you so much, TIFR. And yeah, I will. Thank you. I just wanted to thank Professor Ramakrishna and yourself and Sudesh. Dipan. And
so Malini wanted to say something.
yeah, certainly. You have that. You have to have the microphone there.
There's the mic. So could we just focus?
No, okay, well, you can ask all the questions at home, yeah. I just want to say thank you. It's a great honor to be with you all. And just last message is always ask yourself, are you inclusive? You know, do you look at people who can't see and hear and move differently? Do you think they're human beings and worth befriending? So, are you inclusive? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alur, for such an inspiring lecture. I don't know what to say after hearing what a fascinating journey it's been. What a difficult, extremely challenging terrain you have covered. And of course, as always, there are miles to go before any of us can say that we have reached where we wanted to reach. I think the journey is eternal, but so is the hope that you have conveyed here today. And with that, I think we move forward. So I just want to thank you, say that, you know, the TIFR Alumni Association is extremely grateful to you for accepting our invitation. and delivering such a fantastic message here. And I also want to thank members of the entire ADAPT family. Many of you have been around for the last many days, arranging things outside. So much of commitment that you have actually got them going and motivated them, inspired them. It's truly amazing. I particularly want to mention Madhvi, who suggested the talk, Varsha Huja, who has been here all through, and Bhavna Mukherjee. I think they have just put a tremendous amount of effort into making this lecture a reality, not just a lecture, but the whole event here. And we want to thank Dr. Subhendu Guha and Mrs. Jayashree Guha. I don't know if they joined us on the YouTube or Zoom, but if they did, here is a very nice, wonderful thing that you have done by creating this lecture and getting us in contact with, intellectuals like Dr. Alur. And we hope to keep going with your inspiration. And of course, all parts of TIFR, the people working behind, backstage here, auditorium staff, the cosmetic maintenance people, the security, they have all helped us in getting this event in shape. And so thank all of them. And finally, of course, all of you for being here, making time on this Monday evening. And let's conclude by another round of applause for the speaker. So please join us outside for the high tea where you can continue to ask your questions.